Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 14th Daryl Kraft Memorial Lecture. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Derek Bruin. I'm Head of Agribusiness and Ag Economics at the University of Manitoba. Before we begin, I want to remind you that the University of Manitoba campuses are located on the original lands of the Anishinaabe, Iniwak, Assininiwak, Dakota Oyate, and Dene, and on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We respect the treaties that they made on these territories. We acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. We acknowledge the harms of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to move forward in partnership. That feels like a very good motto for a resilient university and faculty and country. My own experience with errors is that they burn into my memory, and it is by far a better response to move forward and try to solve those problems that have been identified by those errors, rather than try to avoid them, avoid the shame of them. It's much better to be progressive in terms of improving our systems. Dr. Daryl Kraft was a student of the errors of ag policy in Canada. He was somebody who, you can read more about him on our website, but I want to point out a few of his major contributions. He served as a professor in our department for 30 years. Much of his teaching and research focused on improving our institutions, acknowledging harms, and moving forward in partnership. He won an award for an article he wrote with Dr. Colin Carter on trade restrictions in the 80s. And later, Daryl and Colin were on the opposite sides of a big debate on the Canadian Wheat Board, but they remained friends. And Dr. Carter was honored to be a lecturer in 2015. After Daryl died in 2003, his family and friends worked to continue his legacy through the Daryl Kraft Memorial Fund. In addition to funding this lecture, the lecture also supports awards for an undergraduate student. This year's winner for a policy award was won by Satoshi Shikura. I think he's here. Welcome, congratulations for winning. Let's give him a thankery. We also grant graduate fellowships, and this year's winners were Muhammad Adam and Frederick Buffy. Are they here? Muhammad is. Thank you for coming. Congratulations, Muhammad. The past Kraft lectures are posted, a bunch of them have been recorded and are posted on our website. They've included prominent economists from across North America, and I feel that Dr. Jill McCluskey is a worthy new member of that group as our 14th Daryl Kraft lecturer. I think we're going to learn a bit about her early career as part of this presentation. I've started to advance her slide, sorry. Dr. McCluskey is a Regents professor in the Washington State University and director of the School of Economic Sciences, which is a combined agriculture and agricultural economics department. She joined WSU after completing her PhD in Berkeley in 1998. Her research focuses on quality, reputation, food labeling, standards, food access, retail markets, new technology, and women in STEM. And she's worked on the economics of beer, which is a fun area to work on, isn't it, Joe? She's an award-winning researcher. She's widely published and cited and has an H index of 48. For the students in this room, that means that she has 48 articles that have been cited by at least 48 other articles, which is a very big number for our discipline. Congratulations. She's served on as the major professor for 49 PhD graduates. She recently completed a term as editor of the American Journal of Ag Economics. She's the chair of the board on agriculture and natural resources of the National Academy of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. She's the president-elect of the International Association of Agricultural Economics. She's the past president and a fellow of the Agricultural Economics and Applied Economics Association and fellow of the American Association for the Advancements of Science. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jill McCluskey.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you all. I'm so honored to be here and to honor Daryl Kraft's legacy. Thank you to Brian Olson and to everyone else who was so helpful in organizing this and making this happen. So the title is sort of cute, how women saved agricultural economics. And that actually came about from talking with someone who was senior to me, an agricultural economist, who's Susan Offit, who was the first female director of the Economic Research Service at the USDA. And we were sort of laughing, oh, well, women really saved agricultural economics. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we go on. But today's conversation, I'll discuss more generally how women have changed the field of agricultural economics and why diversity matters. Why should we even be talking about this? I'll also discuss my own story and some of my own story and how it's shaped my thinking and my research. And I'll present some of my research on dual career couples in academia, promotional achievement of women in both economics and agricultural economics, and how that affects their representation in academia. So first of all, why are we talking about this? Why should diversity be a goal? And I argue that diversity is important for a sustainable society. We'll need broad expertise to be sustainable in a future with a growing population and limited resources. And diversity of people results in a diversity of ideas. And I think this is really key, and it increases creativity and innovation. And further, when talented women and minority workers are underemployed or drop out, then it's often a loss to society because it's an inefficient use of resources. And if this segment of society is under-resourced, then there's a social loss. And so some of the benefits of diversity, we can think about that. A large investment goes into training each PhD. And if female and minority scholars drop out, then there's a social loss, and this is a problem of specific investment. And I can think about an example of one of my classmates at Berkeley finished her PhD, and she dropped out after her son had medical problems, and she became a realtor. And I'm sure she's a great realtor, but so much training went into her getting that PhD. And so, and also the presence of female, and it's been shown that the presence of female and minority role models help younger women follow in their footsteps. And it might counteract some of the negative stereotypes. And so this picture is, this year, that year I had 3 female PhD students who all graduated at the same time. And the one on the left is a member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, and she went to work as an economist for her tribe. The one next to me is Tongzi Li, and she just recently got promoted to full professor at University of Guelph here in Canada. And then the other one is Zarina Jurakalova, who's a professor at Denison University, and they're all making wonderful impacts. So I think one of the key arguments one of the most persuasive arguments that I found about the benefit of diversity is the wisdom of crowds. And so I read this book, The Wisdom of Crowds by James Wecke, probably 15, 20 years ago. But it talks about that if everyone is similar, it can result in groupthink and less innovation. And it's well documented that crowds perform better than individual experts in making predictions. But the requirement is that the crowd must have uncorrelated information to be effective. So if everyone's the same, the crowd won't help at all. You need different perspectives. And sometimes women and minorities bring different perspective into the conversation. And in economics and agricultural economics, there's been this concern over this private club. Another thing that we need to think about is that there's a paradigm shift. So diversity is now expected. And so the lack of diversity can make an organization feel feel closed, old-fashioned, and out of touch. And so on the top we see here's one of these all-white male panels, and those are made fun of on social media. And so we're trying to avoid that and have diversity of opinion. And I think just from a perspective, from a public relation aspect, even it doesn't look good. So here's my argument about, my argument with Susan Offutt about how women saved agricultural economics. And so women started entering the field in increasing numbers in the 1980s, and their interests were often in non-traditional fields such as environmental and resource economics, food safety and nutrition, and their work expanded the portfolio of the discipline, and it led to greater relevance of social issues and policies. And so we argue that, we're sort of making light of this, but in a sense, women saved agricultural economics from a constrained future that was solely focused on production and commodity markets. That's still so important, and we need that. But it's better to have an expanded set of topics that are dealing with some of the most important challenges of our day. And so some of the traditional fields were farm management, ag finance, commodity market analysis, and women were more likely to study international trade and development, environmental economics, and food systems and consumer choices. So I'll talk a little bit about how, now this is looking at the American side, but the percentage of women who report being female in the AEA. So in 2000, it was under 20%, so about 17%, and it's definitely increased. It's above 35% now. It's still under 40%. So interestingly, students are, in terms of students are the future membership, we see that female students surpassed male students for the first time in 2020. So we could see a gradual increase of female members overall. So in 2019, I gave a talk that covered some of these topics at an international conference, and I talked about how in the big 8 agricultural economics journals, there was only one female editor out of all the journals. And so I thought that was pretty surprising to me. And the other funny thing, so it's the European Review of Agricultural Economics, they actually on their website had the female editor listed as a co-editor, and the men were editors. And so I missed that, so I thought there were none, but they pointed out to me, no, she's actually an editor. Well, it's gotten better. So we see that now we have 4 out of 8 journals have at least one female editor. But there's still 4 that don't. And so having more women as editors might promote consideration of broader topics that are consistent with their interest, and encourage the trend of increasing manuscripts submitted by women for review. And another thing to consider is that it's important for women to be appointed and take on editorships, because often one circle of usual collaborators and friends might be less diverse than the population that you're trying to reach. And so if that's the case and the editors are mostly male, then there will be fewer female reviewers of submitted articles, and there might be negative consequences. And so I talked about this, and I did put my money where my mouth was, and I was editor for 2 years. I stepped down from it, but so in the over 100-year history of the American Journal of Agricultural Economics, there have only been 4 female editors, which is really, really surprising. Yeah, I mean, to me at least. And there are currently none. And I tried to recruit women to a female to take my place, and it's sort of both sides. That some of the women that I asked said no, and then some of the women I suggested, they said, oh no, we wouldn't consider her. So I think it's something that we need to have more diversity in editorships. The percentage of female authors in AJE has been, in the American Journal of Agricultural Economics, been slightly up, but a little bit flat, and it's below 25%, so not that high. So this is part of the argument that women, about women saving agricultural economics, that if we look at the percentage, so the first highlighted number in the top line, so the percentage of, in the year 2000 to 2018, the percentage of female authors is 17.9%, so under 18%. The average citation per article is 21.4, and the average citation per year per article is 1.9. Well, if we look at some of these more heavily above average female authored areas, so food safety and nutrition is over 30% female, and the number of, both the number of average citations per article and article citations per year is above the average. And also in international development, it's also higher, and in rural development, it's also higher. And consumer economics, we're at 22.7%, and the citations are much higher, 34.2 and 3.2 per year. So that's the highest number of citations per article, and a high percentage of women. So this is my co-author. She's on the right, Susan Offit. There's been 3 female head administrators for the Economic Research Service, and it had female leadership for more than 2 decades, and they had a higher percentage of female economists under their leadership, and they, at the same time, they broadened the Economic Research Service portfolio. They added natural resources and placed prominence on consumer economics and food safety and nutrition, as well as managing natural resources and climate change. And so they moved research and policy analysis beyond the traditional topics of farm and commodity market economics, and so ERS adapted its agenda and became more relevant in the emerging policy debates. So also, we should also think about, as women are participating, are women getting the highest honor, and that's the AEA fellow. So, I just updated this. So, since 2000, and there were no women that were recognized before that, women have represented 13% of the total number of fellows. And but there are a few characteristics that stand out. So 2/3 of the women who have received this award had specialties in these areas of food safety and nutrition, or natural resources and environmental economics. 10 of the fellows had been presidents, had been AEA presidents, and this is the male AEA presidents also received it. And then all 3 of the women who were the Economic Research Service USDA administrators were named fellows, just as their male counterparts were before. But at the same time, other prestigious awards were lacking, and so women have gained a foothold as fellow, but they seldom win the other prestigious awards. And we thought about this, that it might be the quality of the work was not as good, but we don't think that's a serious answer. Another possibility is that extra weight of the award committee may be placed on traditional areas in agricultural economics. And although it's difficult to assign each award winner to a given specialty, it appears that about half of the awards in the 3 top categories have been given to traditional specialties. And so it's out of proportion with the ratio of that the specialties in the distribution of the AEA membership. And so we suggested as part of this article that we should have more diversity in the awards committees. So why does this matter? professional recognition is important, and women do a lot of work, but have not gotten as much recognition. Now I'll transition to talk a little bit about my own story. So when I was an undergraduate at UC Santa Barbara, and I had no female professors in economics. Economics was my major. Then I got my PhD from UC Berkeley. There were no female professors in the department when I started. Elizabeth Sadulay was hired. She was non-tenure tracked, and she got hired into a tenure track position in 1995, so a year after I started. I took only one class from a female professor in economics, and that was only half a semester. So I really didn't have female mentors at all. There were a significant number of female graduate students, and 4 of us had the only all-female office. And here we're all going for graduation, and the one in front of me, Rachel Goodhue, is the department chair at UC Davis, and she's an AEA fellow. But I still was able to have mentors, and I think this is an important thing for male professors to think about, that I had great male mentors who helped me. And so I had both faculty and peer mentors, and I feel like my faculty mentors valued my ideas based on their merit, not based on my gender or my student status. I always felt like I was treated with a colleague, and I left the program with confidence. And then the bottom line were some of my peer mentors, and they were, and I think that's important to have peer mentors to each other, both across genders. So it's improving, but this can be a typical picture. So when I was new on the PhD market, a new PhD on the job market, I interviewed at some departments, and where I would have been the only faculty member, the only female faculty member, and things have improved, but sometimes I'm the only woman. I can often be the only woman in the room still. I'll transition a little bit more. So in my story, I had a 2-body problem. And so what does that mean? That means that I met my husband in grad school at Berkeley, and we both looked for faculty jobs in 1998. He's a physicist, I'm an economist. And so it takes a lot of startup money to accommodate a physicist, about $1 million to set up a lab. And so I could only go where he had a job. They could create a job for me. Economists we might be more expensive on a yearly basis, but to start us, we're cheap. Buy us a computer and give us an office. Now we have to pay for data too. But Washington State University offered us both tenure track jobs. I was hired as the trailing partner. And now Matt is a distinguished professor. He's served as department chair. He has a continuous record of National Science Foundation funding. I was named a Regents professor, and it's limited to only 30 out of about 2,000 faculty. So this experience made me think about how being part of a dual career couple affects the representation of women. And so I received NSF funding to study how dual career couples in academia, to study them in academia, and I had the hypothesis that maybe the partner hires, if you hire a couple, on average they might be better, and so I'll talk about that. So the question is, so do spousal hires dilute faculty quality? And there's a common perception that because a partner hire is recruited as part of the negotiation process for the first hire rather than based on their own merits in a national search, they're somehow not as good. And so my question is, well, what if it's the other way around? What if the faculty hired via a partner accommodation program are actually better on average than regular hires? And so as an economist, I was thinking about this, and here's some intuition of theory on this. So if you have a single candidate, they want to go to the best job, the best university that offers them a job. But couple candidates prefer to be at the best university that offers them both jobs, where both partners can get a job. And so there is some empirical justification for this. Some couples prioritize being together over career considerations, and one member of the couple might be willing to forgo her best available job to remain with her partner. We assume that the universities want to maximize the quality of their hired faculty using independent evaluation rules, so they don't average the evaluation. You don't have a star and someone who's terrible and have an average. You're independently evaluating them. And we also assume that the productivity or the quality is perfectly observable. And so this model predicts that each university will employ a quality cutoff rule, and they'll make offers to all candidates that are better with the ability that is at or above their thresholds. And single candidates will accept their best offer, and couples will accept the best offer from universities who offer to them both. And so here's an example of this model with three universities. And so you see here with the single candidate, we have two people that are in the bottom third, and they go to the lowest ranked university. The middle, for single candidates, the middle ones go to the middle university, and the high go to the high university. But interestingly, when you have the dual career couples, the high university gets the high couple, but the medium university gets not only the medium, but it gets the medium high and the high medium. So on average, the couples will be higher than the single. And with the lowest one, you see there's even more combinations, that they not only get the low, but they get the low medium and the low high. So the lowest ranked university has the most to benefit. One of the other interesting things that come out of that model is that as the proportion of couples in the market, which has been increasing because you're more likely to meet in graduate school, as the number of couples in the market increases, then there can be quality compression, so that the lower universities become better, and the higher universities lower their standards a little bit in order to fill all their jobs. Okay, and here's with K universities, and you can have different distributions. But so it's a really simple model, but under these conditions, the expected quality of a couple hire is greater than a single hire, and the gains are greatest for the lowest tier university. And this comes from mixed quality couples and the couple's desire to be at the same institution. And so, and I would also mention, I think I skipped this out of time, but women are more likely to be part of a couple also than men. So men are more likely to marry someone who's a non-academic, and women are more likely to marry an academic. So first I looked at, I call this PAP as partner accommodation policies. We looked at it at my university, Washington State University. They started keeping records in 1999, so I'm not in this because I was hired in 1998. But they say that they have an independent evaluation approach to hiring. We looked at productivity between couple and non-couple hires that were hired between 1999 and 2010. We used yearly publications and whether an individual obtained a grant as measures of productivity. And we also looked at whether couple hires have longer durations of employment. And duration of employment is important, especially in academia, where if you have a startup so if you pay that $1 million to start up a physics lab and that guy leaves, then you still have to come up with new money to hire the next person. So so duration of employment is important. And so we found across all fields that the couple, okay. So the probability of leaving if you're part of a couple is lower. So that means that you're likely to stay longer. And then the individuals who we see that the couples are more likely to be in STEM. So I'm sorry that I was slow on this. So in this all fields versus STEM fields, The joint hires in STEM were higher, so we're more likely to have couples that are in STEM, and that's where women are most underrepresented. In the probability of getting a grant, the couple, if you were a member of a couple, it's positive and significant that you're more likely to get a grant. And we also separated it out by primary hire versus partner hire. We also used a Poisson model to look at the effects on annual research publications. And we see that that's also positive and significant for the joint hire. So I'm looking in the right-hand corner. And then we separated out by primary and partner. The primary was positive and significant. The partner was positive but not statistically significant. So not different than the rest of the individuals. So then we went on and we looked at some other universities, and from 2004 to 2014 with Web of Science data, and we were looking at H index, which we were told that was a better thing to look at, and we compared how faculty that were hired via the partner accommodation policy compared to traditional hires fared, and so it was interesting. That Washington State University and University of Wyoming had both similar results, that the partner hire was positive and significant, that they would have a higher H index, and the primary hire was positive. The partner hire was not statistically different from zero. So, and then in Ohio State University, neither was statistically significant. And then at Virginia Tech, it was interesting that the partner hire was kind of a high number and statistically significant, and the primary hire was statistically significant at the 10% level and negative. So, so a little bit of mixed results there. It might be that, and we were trying to think of why might this be? Well, it might be that not all of our assumptions in our model were true, and so it could be that it might be that the universities were not maximizing quality, or they were maximizing something else. But still I think that promising, but a bit mixed results. And then so as part of this grant, we also looked at representation of women when they had dual career policies. And it's interesting, there's this NSF Advanced grant that's institutional transformation, and it's very correlated, so we can't include both that and a dual career policy in the same model. But we see that for assistant and associate professors, it's positive and significant for both the NSF grant and the dual career policy for representation of women, the percentage of women in the faculty by rank. And for a full professor, it's only significant for the NSF Advanced grant. So then the other thing I was thinking about, that another story is childcare needed. And so my children were born 2 years apart. My first child was born when I was a third-year PhD student, and my second was born when I was my first year of being a tenure-track assistant professor. And I felt finding infant childcare was the most challenging thing I faced as a new professor. You know, it shouldn't be that, but it really was. And if you're in a college town where you just can't find, they don't have the childcare resources, and it's in a non-urban setting. And so it's difficult to concentrate on your work if you're worried about the care that your children are getting. I did get a spot in the WSU Children's Center, and that made a big difference, but it made me think about how the availability of childcare affects the representation of women in academia. Another part of my story is that when my son was 14 years old, he suffered from a ruptured brain aneurysm. My husband and I took 2 months off and just stayed at the hospital with him in Seattle. He's okay now. He graduated from college and is doing great. But this also emphasized how the importance of work-life support is for representation of women, and especially that one of my friends dropped out of her tenure track position when her child was having medical problems. And so I was thinking about promotional achievement of women in economics and agricultural economics. So female representation on university faculties in Ag and Applied Economics Department and General Economics has decreased slowly, but women are still in the minority. And so, and the representation of women falls as you increase in academic rank. And so the question is, why are there so few women at higher ranks? And so to understand this, we compiled a data set from all US PhD granting agricultural economics and general economics departments. And using this data, we look at factors that predict rank, including individual department and institutional characteristics. And here's the latest, this is just the latest from the US Committee on Women in Economics. And it shows that that at the full professor level, women are, it's the lowest, but it's gone up, it's probably had the biggest increase, but still below 20%. Let's see. Senior majors are still pretty flat, and first-year students are still pretty flat. So I'll talk just a little bit about agricultural economics versus economics, because I'm looking at both sides. And so agricultural economics are typically located in colleges of agriculture at land-grant universities. The publication expectations are different, so there's a greater expectation of quantity in applied problem-oriented articles, and grant expectations are high. In economics, they're typically in a College of Arts and Sciences or College of Business. Their publication expectations are, they expect lower quantity, but they expect higher quality, and they have very low grant expectations. In agricultural economics, there's often built-in funding, and it allows for reduced teaching, and many faculty have extension appointments. In economics, they have a higher average teaching load, and the PhD students are often funded by teaching assistantships instead of research assistantships, and the average salaries are higher. And so we collected data, and we're only considering tenure track faculty, and the identification was based on personal and administrative knowledge, field of research, and in consultation with faculty at both universities. Some of the variables we considered is whether it's a top 50 job, where the person is employed at the university, whether they got a top 50 PhD, whether it's a public or private university, their years of experience, so since getting their PhD, the number of publications, so the number of journal articles, books, or book chapters that are, and this was obtained from the EBSCO database, and then also whether they're agricultural economics. And so here's the US universities with agricultural economics, and I also highlighted which ones are top 50 universities and top 50 econ ranking. And so here's the descriptive statistics. I don't know if you can, I hope you can see this, but for PhD granting programs, there are fewer, and this is from 2016-17, fewer than 19% women on the faculty. So really pretty low. And let's see, there's 18% of them were in agricultural and applied economists. And I'll keep, this is, and it's really, really interesting how similar econ is to agricultural economics. So 18.6% of women are faculty in economics departments. And at the full professor level, 35% of women are full professors, where 54.7% of the men are full professors. Really interesting, I think, is this average annual publications, and it's bigger in economics than agricultural economics. So women on average in economics only published 0.708 articles per year, so significantly less than men, which was 1.073. Agricultural economics, so in agricultural economics, we had 18.5%, so almost the same as in economics. 35.2% of the women were full professors. Over 60% of the men were full professors. In agricultural economics, the women published almost, so closer to 0.919 journal articles on average per year, and men published 1.117. So it's interesting to think about women in economics and agricultural economics publish at lower rates than men. So it's an interesting question why, and I thought that this article by Erin Hengel is really interesting. It's called Publishing While Female, and it uses readability scores from linguistics to test if women are held to higher standards in the top 5 economics journals. And they found that using this linguistic software, they found that female-authored papers are written 1% to 6% better than the equivalent papers by men. And the readability gap grows over time, that senior women write at least 9% more clearly than they otherwise would, so that the women are learning to write better over time. Female papers take 6 months longer in peer review, and that's controlling for maternity leave and things like that. And she argues that this results in a quality-quantity trade-off, that women are producing better written but fewer journal articles. And she calls this a tax. So I thought that was really an interesting take on this lower publishing rate. So this is my only equation, and so just saying what we do, I'm trying to predict which box each person falls in. And so using an ordered Probit model to predict which faculty rank they're at. And so, and the X is just it represents the institutional work-life programs, personal characteristics, and other variables. And because our data is based on a point in time, it's not predicting promotion, but rather the model's trying to understand the factors that explain the achievement of each faculty member's rank. And we also have an ag econ indicator variable to understand if there's any differential effects on rank from being an agricultural economist. So here's the results of the estimation, and we estimated it both a full model and for women only and for men only. And it's really interesting that the only thing that really matters for women in general is their publications and their experience to explain their rank. And so we see that women have, it's in that first red square, women have the coefficient for publications is 0.48, and where men is 0.089. I also point out that agricultural economics, there's a negative coefficient on that, and what that means is that you need more publications to get the same rank if you're an agricultural economist. And so publications, it's highly significant, so it's all about publications. Ag economists need more publications, and in the combined model with both male and female, ag economists are estimated to require 71% more publications to achieve the same positive contribution to their rank. So I thought that was really interesting. Female economists need fewer publications. So the positive contribution of publications to the academic rank is larger for females than for males. So for female ag economists, each publication counts 15% more, and for female general economists, it counts 66% more. But I'll also say, and I think I said this later too, that if you're missing publications, it matters more too. That's the downside. The upside is each one has a positive contribution, but if you're missing it, it matters more. Experience matters, it's positive, it's concave, so that means it's at a decreasing rate. And in our sample, though, it's the contribution, the global maximum is at 30 to almost 33 years, so it's positive in the relevant area. Does holding a positive top 50 PhD matter? Yes, but not for female faculty. So I thought that was interesting, and so it makes you think about things such as are male economists better at using their graduate networks than female academics in academia, and also are female economists sometimes excluded from these networks? And then does holding a top 50 PhD matter for Ag Econ faculty? It has a statistically significant negative sign. And so it has a negative effect in compared to the adjustment. And so we might ask questions such as, is there self-selection of lesser candidates from top 50 universities into Ag Econ departments? So they try to go to the best university they can, but they can't get into econ, they go to Ag Econ? Or are Ag economists from top 50 PhDs choosing a different publication strategy? So they should be trying to maximize their publications, but instead they're choosing this top 5 or nothing strategy. Does holding a current job at a top 50 university matter? And yes, it's positive, but not for female faculty. And then it has a negative effect on Ag economists. Is there a general effect of being an Ag economist on promotional achievement? We find that there's no significant incremental impact of academic rank on being an Ag economist in comparison to general economics. And so so there's no downside from that. So the policy implications. For women, it's all about publications. And so we should think about policies that support female faculty's ability to publish. And so I would argue that there should be emphasis on mentor programs, on more female editors, and on these work-life programs that support female faculty. So the main conclusion of that study is that for female faculty, the main factors affecting promotional attainment are publications and experience. Each publication has a greater impact relative to their male counterparts. The upside is that fewer publications are needed, but the downside is that if your count is low, it matters more. Agricultural economists need more publications for rank achievement than their general econ counterpart, and this is probably part of this quality-quantity trade-off. So thinking about future directions in this area is trying to understand why do women publish less, what types of policies best support female faculty in reaching their potential, especially in STEM. Why does this top 50 status support male faculty in general economics, but not male Ag Econ counterparts, nor women in either area of economics? And then I'll talk about the last, and this is really personal, but I think it's important to say. And so my last story is the worst outcome, and this is understanding relationship violence. And so my daughter, Lauren McCluskey, was a 21-year-old honors student athlete. She was murdered in October 22nd, 2018 by a man at the University of Utah that she briefly dated. And we started the Lauren McCluskey Foundation to honor her legacy by bringing awareness and fund research for and provide resources to change the culture that responds poorly to dating violence and stalking on university campuses. And so, so part of this is that Lauren went to the police, reported she was not helped. And I thought about if I were a professor, and how could I have helped her at the University of Utah, how could I have helped her? And so one thing that I could have done is I could have had Lauren's promise on my syllabus, a syllabus statement. And so Lauren's promise is, I will listen and believe you if someone is threatening you. And we send out stickers for free. You can order them at laurenmccluskey.org, and faculty at more than 400 universities have made Lauren's promise. There's a ESPN documentary about her called Listen. Another thing that we thought about is how can we create incentives for universities to respond better to dating violence and stalking. And one thing that we could do is create a campus safety score or ranking. And these rankings can incentivize universities to adopt best practices, procedures, and policies. Students want to attend a higher ranked universities, this creates incentives for universities. So we have a preliminary strawman version of this campus safety score, and it's based on policies and procedures at 50% that they're adopting the best policy and procedures. We also have 10% culture, and so those are, examples could be percentage of female officers, percentage of the faculty that have adopted Lauren's promise. We also would have to include background crime data. So this includes violent crime and stalking on campus from the Clery Act and other off-campus background crime from FBI data, and then students' perspective, so evaluations of students' perspective of their own safety. So do they think there's adequate lighting, et cetera. And so, so why did I include this? I think it's important to think about that. How does relationship violence and stalking affect female representation? Before Lauren was murdered, I had not experienced this. I didn't understand the severity of this problem. But relationship violence victims are less likely to graduate from college. Women are disproportionately victims, and there's other leaky pipeline issues. So where women are more likely to leave. And then, so that was a really deep, difficult topic, but I'll bring it back now to why does female representation matter? So I want to just focus on that if we have low female representation, we forego the benefits of diversity and inclusion. So we can't be as creative. We might consider fewer policy options. There are benefits from different decision-making styles and the mentorship of the younger generation. I argue that all of this is true for underrepresented minorities as well. So going forward, a few ideas are to look at specialty of women on faculties, to keep track of representation on awards committees at meetings and on journals, and support the ability. And the main thing, this is really the main focus of this, is to support the ability of women to be successful at school and work. And so thank you, and I'm open for questions.
We've got time for some questions. Does anybody?
Yeah, first.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation and the results. Super interesting. You talk about the underrepresentation of women in publishing and at kind of awards, those high levels. But the undergrads are fairly well represented, I guess, women undergrads. Where do the women go? And I ask this question because I look at this in the grain industry as well. Where did the women go? There's no women up high. I think they go where they're able to succeed. And sometimes the larger organizations, the big grain companies, if they're big grain traders, they're all men. That environment is not set up for these women to succeed. So where did the women grads go after they graduate?
I think that female PhD graduates are more likely to go into either government or industry. And so I looked at this a while back, that the Economic Research Service had a much higher proportion of women than faculty in the general at universities in the US. So I think that the government can be, has made itself into a friendly environment for women. So there are many dual career opportunities in Washington, D.C., for example, where a lot of those jobs are, so that both members of the couple, if they're a part of a dual career couple, can find a job. And also maybe less strict requirements on producing a lot of publications to get tenure, for example. So it's more of a 40-hour-a-week job. So I think that there are things like that make it more family friendly for women. But it is interesting. It seems like this the generation that is, our current undergraduates and those a little bit older, I think, are less likely to make some of the sacrifices that my generation was willing to make in working crazy hours and things like that. So it's both male and female. So I think that it'll be interesting to see how things evolve.
Anyone else from McCluskey?
Thank you so much, Dr. McCluskey. I'm Christina Langell. I'm a professor in human nutritional sciences, and I've been in it since 2001 and very proud to be the last graduating student with a BSc in home economics from the University of Alberta. I don't have the ring. I was so poor I couldn't buy the ring. But I want to thank you in sharing your story. And just so you know how you moved me, and I don't know, I'm certain you've moved everyone in this room with your passion for moving forward and helping women through academia, and everyone here has different journeys. And I just recently lost my husband, so a different journey than some people, so I completely can relate. And I'm so proud that you're here today to tell us that. My question is, so I'm in I graduated from home economics. I'm in nutrition, and I work with older adults. And there is a discrepancy that I've seen through the years, and everyone's very successful. Everyone's research means something and will result in positive impacts towards many different places. But I found there's a difference when we're looking at men and women and types of research they might do in science. So there's the harder science and the softer science. And sometimes the respect isn't always there for people that still do amazing research, but it's not a hard type science. Do you have any comments about that? And how do we move forward with saying that everything fits, whether it's qualitative, quantitative, both? Which one comes first, chicken or the egg? It doesn't matter. It's all important in how we move forward.
First of all, I'm very sorry to hear about the loss of your husband. I think that sometimes there is a different levels of respect across fields, and I think that economists are definitely guilty of that they view themselves as the top of the hierarchy of the social sciences. So it's very interesting. But I think that I'm not really sure about how to deal with that difference. Although I feel like it's the use of citations, I think can matter, because that is something that can go across fields. Google Scholar keeps track of everything, and so I know people from the softer side that have huge citation counts, and they're respected, but it shouldn't just be that. And so I guess I just personally try to respect, so I can think about that my own faculty, I'm the department chair or the director, my own faculty make different contributions, and some contributions might be more valued by outsiders, but I value each one for the contribution that they make to our unit and to our students and our state. And so I think that it has to start there. But I think it is a difficult problem.
Hi, Professor. I just have a question regarding the fact that when you look at the importance of agriculture to like the Canadian prairie provinces or the U.S. Plain states, and certainly in terms of the contribution to the economy, what do you think will be the ramifications of the depopulation of the U.S. Midwest as well as the Canadian prairies, which is a known sociological phenomenon? So I wanted to know, so what would be the ramifications, I guess, for women or both men and women because of just the depopulation of our agricultural broad plains? And secondly, maybe associated with that too, what do you see as the ramifications for studies in associated areas? I'm thinking like, for instance, here in Manitoba, if you want to study for a Master of Rural Studies, you have to go to Brandon University, which is like one of the smallest universities in Canada and probably one of the ones with the least citations for researchers, well, other than the music program at Brandon University. But like, for instance, U of M here, the doctoral program university, has no things such as a Master of Rural Studies. And just what would be the ramifications for, continuing the work of agriculture and research and so on?
It's a little outside of my area of expertise, but I see the problem that there is this depopulation and in the U.S. Midwest and Canada, and it has challenges. I think that it's mitigated a little bit that we can buy things online at least now, and so but it's a concern that when you lose schools and lose grocery stores, it makes it so much harder to live, and it seems like it could be a good choice for the environment to rebuild what you live in what you have. So, but that's more, it's a little outside of my area of expertise.
I'm going to put a plug in for the rural development scholars at Brandon. They're highly cited. Some of them are really highly cited. And I was wondering if, because they're in a rural area, that leads to their focus and their energy the way ag economics seem to, we got very creative in agriculture problems in a way that we actually advanced the econ discipline. So there's hope at Brown. Can I ask one question?
Sure.
You seem like a very empirical person. I'm just wondering if you had looked into the progress people have had in terms of teaching relative to publications.
I feel like teaching is very difficult to evaluate, actually. And there are often biases against women in teaching evaluation. So the main way that universities have evaluated faculty in terms of their teaching is their student evaluations, so their average student evaluations. And I feel like there is, I know that there are studies on this. I don't have them on the top of my head, but that women a woman is on average receive lower student evaluations than men. And I think, I actually felt this more as a younger professor, that I felt that I wasn't what the students expected. They expected an old white guy, with suspenders to come in there and teach their class, and that wasn't me. So so I think that might be part of it. It's really difficult to evaluate teaching. So teaching evaluations can be part of it, but I think that they're just a little part. Maybe the success of your students would be a better evaluation of teaching. And then extension is also difficult to evaluate. And they're always, people in extension are always trying to better show their impacts, but I think it's a really hard problem.
One more chance for the questions, and yes, to us. What is?
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for your presentation, Jill. And I'm Yvonne Lawley from the Department of Plant Science, who's the spousal hire to an ag economist in the department that you're visiting today. And maybe Derek's question really just got at the question I had, which was you did some really interesting research with the metrics that were available. What metrics do we not have right now that you would love to do your next study on? So you talked about how teaching evaluation scores are imperfect. Are there other areas beyond teaching that interest you, but maybe you ran into a data barrier?
Yeah. I'd really have to think about, I'm not really sure how to address the teaching side, but I would be interested in looking at finding out more about individual characteristics of faculty and their publications, and also looking at the journal editors and reviewers, and I would love to do something like that, to go in farther about why are women publishing less. So I'm interested in that.
Jill, at lunch, you mentioned not having enough data on even carbon emissions and modeling that. Like I took data, we're sort of getting convinced that big data is going to solve all the problems, but not if they don't measure important things.
We have to know what to measure. So it was interesting. I was talking with Patrick Biari, he was the chief economist for Amazon, and he was saying that Amazon hires 100 economists a year, so it's about 10% of the U.S. market, and of the PhDs produced in the U.S. And he was saying that economists are better than data scientists or statisticians or mathematicians because they can do that, but they know what to measure. And so part of it is if we're looking at the theories and trying to understand, we know better what to measure. And then that just sounded like I'm saying how good economics is, so I should say, and I also need to talk to the qualitative researchers to get that input also. So I that's speaking from an economics perspective, and I realize I did it.
I think that's a very good point to make. Anyone else? All right. Should I switch mics and go to that? Can I just do it all with this one? All right. I'm going to eventually thank you again, but I would like to thank some people who work on this lecture all the time. One of whom is bringing down a gift for Jill that I left in my office. This is the 14th lecture, but it actually started in 2003, and Surinder, who's walking away, has been working on it since then, and so has Brian Olson. Is Brian here? He might have left already, but he has been sort of the driving force of that celebrating Daryl's memory within our departments. He's been the department head most of that time and was the tireless person in terms of serving on that. And I want to thank them both. We should give them a clap, please. And Danny is here, and I want to thank the family and you have an inside person in the Dean's office now that's really a mover and shaker in terms of keeping us on track. We want to thank the Kraft family too. Thank you very much for all your support. And so one more thank you to Jill. Here's a token of our appreciation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. That's it for, oh yes, one more clap, sure. That is the end of our Kraft lecture for this year. We'll see you next year. Thanks for coming.